Hi everybody, it's Mark here from coachestrainingroom.com. Thanks for joining us first of all. We're going to be discussing a webinar on defending today. So let's start by just mentioning that defending, in my opinion, is a bit of a forgotten art these days. Defending properly, can win you just as many games as the fancy, beautiful game as we know it, the attacking, the passing, the flair style of the game, but there's the old adage: if you don't concede, you can't lose, and it's as true today as it's ever been. For any followers of the British Premier League, you'll have seen Chelsea just close out the season. They've just been crowned champions just by playing this patient, structured defensive game, and then hitting teams on the counter attack and getting victories. So as a good defensive unit needs to have the following, and we've looked at Maslow's hierarchy of needs for this one, and we've kind of created our own off that. So you'll notice the base of the pyramid there is communication. Without the communication, none of the other steps can take place. So we've got communication, organisation, structure. Now, organisation and structure are similar in their terms, but we're breaking those down into separate things there. Finally, at the top of that pyramid, we have trust. Now, without any of those levels, you can't get to the next stage. So, from communication breeds organisation. That could be the central voice of a defensive unit, telling people where to go, where to be, who presses the ball in certain situations, when to drop off. That's crucial there. The communication moving into the organisation. Now, structure, the reason we've separated these out is because structure tends to give off a very rigid connotation when we mention structure of something. Now, structure doesn't necessarily have to be a rigid form. You know, you're going to play this position, this is where you're going to be. The structure of the team could be very fluid. And we notice Louis van Gaal's teams, he kind of plays this system where players can be trained in different areas or competent in different areas of the field, so that he can kind of rotate his team as he sees fit. So that structure is very fluid, it's very loose, but again, for that to work properly, you need the organisation and you need the communication. Absolutely imperative there that these things come. Now, from all of those stages, the communication coming through organisation and then the structure of the team getting set because of the organisation and the communication, then we can start to build trust. And trust is absolutely crucial as a defensive unit, that you trust your teammate to do their role so that you can relax into your own role and you can focus on what you need to do. You need to have eyes everywhere, but you can't be keeping eyes on other people, making sure they're doing their jobs. You need to trust your teammates so that you do that. Now we're just going to show a quick clip here. Really simple way to show this in action. Now this is Barcelona against Paris Saint-Germain in the Champions League, and again you can see here the defensive unit are set for the free kick, and what they're going to do as soon as the runner steps up to take the kick, everybody pushes out. Now we can see that there, everybody's pushed up and out, and they've called 4 or 5 players offside there, and the attacks come to nothing. Now, without the communication of that defensive unit to talk about what they were going to do, and then to organise that, and then the trust to have everybody push out at the same time, you can imagine the catastrophe if one player hadn't been quite as alert as the rest and not pressed out and played everybody onside. They would have been in all sorts of trouble. So that's just a kind of fun one to look at there, and that is that structure in action. So we'll talk a little bit now about individual roles of players, and we'll try and relate that back to the structure we've just discussed. So first off, let's assume we know the roles of individual defenders. As a prerequisite there, we do have an article on defending as a unit. We'll include a link for that there so you can actually have a look at the positions. That just explains each defender's roles and responsibilities throughout a defensive unit there. So we'll leave a link in for that so you can have a read of that as a prerequisite. So we'll assume that we know the roles now. We'll talk a little bit about the first defender. So the first defender's job, that's the player closest to the ball. First defender's job is to get out to that player, close the space down, restrict the space and get close to that player. We call that touch tight. So you're close enough that if you were to reach out your arm, you would be able to have your hand somewhere above the ball there. that's a good reference point. That's as close as I want to get to that defender. Once I'm there, I'm now an object between the ball and where that player wants to go. I'm going to try and stay there for as long as I possibly can. Now, for all youth players, I always try and tell them we want to be somewhere between sumo wrestler, which would be square on with my feet apart. I want to be somewhere between there and on a surfboard or a skateboard, perhaps. Okay, so I want to be side on to the player so that I'm not so square on, so I don't want to be facing that player too much. That would give them the easy pass. That gives them 3 ways around me, because if I stand square on, that gives them the pass through my legs. It means they can go to my left and my right, so they've got 3 options. What I want to do is make play a little bit more predictable, so I stand side on. Now if I'm directly in front of that player, now they've got 2 options. They've got to my left and they have to my right. If I'm facing them with my right foot forward, that means if they turn to my right, they've crossed me on the blind side and I'm in trouble now. So what I want to do is make play even more predictable, and I want to stand to one side of that player and show them one side of the field to run into. If I've done that, I want to maybe squeeze them towards the outside of the field. Now, there's 2 different arguments for this one. I'm firmly on the side that I want to show the player to the side of the field. Some coaches would argue that I want to show the player into traffic, so I want to force that player to move into a more constricted space where there's more defenders around, so that I can actually have one of my other players take the ball away if they try and pass me. I'm going to err on the side of caution and say yes, that option does work. If you show them infield, show them into traffic, that gives another defender the opportunity to take the ball away. It is very risky. You're showing them infield, and if it doesn't work out, they've got a shot on goal. So I would always recommend that you show the players to the side of the field. Try and usher them towards the corners. That's away from the danger. That player wants to go towards the goal. So if you're offering them the side of the field, if you're offering them the sideline, they can run into that space and you can restrict them, and you can use the sideline of the field as another defender there. So first things first, you want to get out to the ball, close down the space, and remain constant between the player and where their destination is, where they want to go. So remain between them and the goal. To do that, you need to be patient. Slow the attack down as much as you can. Now, the role of the first defender, you don't want to overcommit here. So you want to get out to the ball and you just want to slow the attack down. I would say delay that play as much as you can, because the more you delay it, the more opportunity you get to for other players to get back behind the ball, and the more players you have behind the ball, the harder you are to break down as a team, and the more organised you can be from there. Now, just to refer back to my point about being sideways onto that player, the reason we do that, the reason we get side on and remain touch tight, is because the player is going to want to try and beat us at some point. If we're being patient and we're jockeying backwards away from the player, slowing them down and just remaining close to them, at some point they're going to have to accelerate to get past us. Now, the differences between dribbling and running with the ball is dribbling and keeping the ball very close. However, I can't reach my maximum speed keeping the ball very, very close to my feet. So at some point I'm going to have to stretch my legs. I'm going to have to keep the ball a little bit further away from me so that I can gain some momentum to get around that player, around that defender. So back to the defender's perspective, we just have to be patient. As a defender, sit there and wait for that opportunity. Now, if I'm touch tight and I'm side on, I'm ready to either run towards them or with them. If they're going to set off, I'm quietly confident that I've got a 2-yard head start there if I'm touch tight to them. And over a 5-yard sprint with a 2-yard head start, I think I'm going to be first to the ball there in most situations. So remain sideways, remain alert, stay light on your feet. You want to be able to go towards the ball if you need to, if there's an opportunity there that you can nick the ball away. And then you also want to be able to set off running with that player if they try and beat you. What I also see a lot of the time as the first defenders is they slow the player down, they do the job, they really, really delay the attack in such a way that the player might have to turn around and look for another option, maybe look for a pass away. At that point, when the player turns their back with the ball and they start looking back towards their own goal or infield, the defender gets even closer and still battles to win that ball back. As far as I'm concerned, as the first defender, if you've turned them round and you've made them look for another option, they're essentially out of ideas at this point. I believe that we've done our job at that point. And what I see too often is players still trying to win that ball back, getting too close to that defender and just allowing themselves to be actually turned around again and beaten because they got too close to that defender. They were trying to win the ball back in a situation where they didn't really need to go ahead and try and win that ball. As far as I'm concerned, as the first defender, I slow the play down. If I force that player to pass away, fantastic, that's my job done. If the opportunity arises where I can take the ball safely, do so. However, just be patient, wait for that opportunity to present itself. If they do turn around and pass away, that's fine. That's where we go back to our communication. That's your job. You might need to track that runner. You might need to make sure that they don't run into a dangerous position. At that point, that's where we need to be communicating as a back four. Who's going to press that next ball? Who's going to go out to the next player who has the ball now and assume that role of the first defender? Again, then we relate that back to trust. If we've communicated that point, if we've organised accordingly and our structure is right, we can trust the players in our group to assume their role. I often ask this question and I do get mixed responses. If I ask my players, okay, so the player with the ball has now passed the ball away. I was the first defender. Do I go with the ball or do I go with the player? And it's an interesting one to put out there to the players because you will get a mixed response sometimes. A lot of players will say the ball, in which case I'll present them with another question. Okay, so if that next player then makes another pass and that next player makes another pass, how many people do we have potentially chasing that same ball? In that theory, if another player has actually pressed that ball as well, we could have 4 players chasing the same ball, in which case there's going to be gaping areas on the field that can be exploited by a couple of quick passes. So I would always stress that they go with the player that they were marking. It might be that they just need to drop back into a deeper position so that they can see both the player that passed the ball, see their movements, see their off the ball runs, and make sure the danger isn't immediate on the field. And just to go back to the point that I made about showing the player down to the side of the field, let's give ourselves a scenario now. So the first defender and the attacker, they're both running down the side of the field. Now this could be potentially a crossing opportunity, which could result in a goal scoring opportunity. So we do need to consider that option as well. Just because the threat has come down the side of the field doesn't mean that it isn't dangerous, doesn't mean that they can't get that pass away and cause a threat to the goal. So the other defenders in the area, now we need to organise ourselves. And again, that stems from communication. So each player is accountable for a player on the field. So if you're in the area, you've picked up a player and you've let your teammates know that you're marking a player. You might find that the structure has to be a certain way. So you want to be able to see down the line of the field. And I was always taught to have your chest facing the crossing player. So if they're trying to get a ball in, the last thing I want to be doing as a defender is running directly back towards my own goal when that cross is played. If I'm running back towards my own goal, it's a dead race between me and the attackers there, okay? Because they're facing the direction that they want to face. They're trying to shoot on that goal. Me, if I'm running back towards my own goal and I'm facing my own goal when the cross is being delivered, something's gone wrong. I want to have set myself well before that and get my chest facing the ball so that I can set myself, I can see the cross coming in, and I've also got my body open so I can see any running defenders and I can take out the threat if necessary. I can be first to the ball, I can see their run, and I can make sure I'm preempting what's going to happen next. So always try and face that ball. There's a great debate between man marking, player marking individually, and zonal marking. Zonal marking would be where we each have an area of the box. So anything dropping in front of me, that's mine to deal with. Anything that goes over my head in front of another player, that's theirs to deal with. So those zones belong to individual players. And again, as my personal opinion is that zones or areas on the field aren't the ones that are scoring the goals. It's actually the players that are scoring the goals. So if they're attacking that space at the same time as you, it's 50-50. Or if somebody's wires get crossed and the communication isn't quite right, very, very dangerous. Whereas if we're man marking and each player has a player that they're marking and they're accountable for, again, each player is accounted for in a sense so that you can, if the ball is dropping in a certain area or towards a certain player, you know that is your duty to deal with. Again, you can communicate that with the rest of your teammates, and that boils down to the trust factor. So moving on from this part, we're going to start discussing now the types of attack we can come up against and what we need to do as defenders to combat that. First point we have here is penetration. From the attacker's side, this is perhaps a through ball to an attacker, a direct run at a defender something that is going to try and penetrate that defensive line or bypass the midfield and attack the last line of defence. So penetration, they're looking to exploit opportunities quickly. They're trying to get in on goal as fast as they can. The way that we're going to combat this is we're going to delay. So back to the role of the first defender there, we're going to try and get ourselves close to that defender and remain constant between them, be impatient, delaying, waiting for the opportunity to take the ball back. If the opportunity doesn't present itself straight away, at least we're slowing the attack down so that we can get numbers back behind the ball. So penetration, the quick attack, that's going to be combated by delaying that attacker. Now, the second point we have here is support. This is, let's say, the penetration attack hasn't worked, that defender, the attacker has had to slow right down, and he's now waiting on supporting players to come and give him an out, give him another option there, so he can rethink and they can replan the attack. When support arrives, from a defensive standpoint, we need to provide a little bit of depth. So the depth is going to come in the terms of the players that are back behind the ball. They're providing cover for, first of all, the first defender. So if the first defender gets beaten, they're on the right side of the first defender so that they can step in and assume the role of the first defender if they do get beat. Also, being a little bit deeper allows you to see more of the field. You can see the attack developing. You can see the other players on the field, where they're supporting and where you might need to position yourself accordingly. So support, when the support arrives on the attacking side, we need to provide depth for that first defender and also to give ourselves a bit more coverage on the field. Now, back to another point that we made there about width. Okay, if the attack goes down the side of the field, what they're trying to do there as from an attacking standpoint is make the field as wide as you can. That's a really, really good point. If you're in possession of the ball, you want to make the field as wide as you can. That's going to create more space. So if the width is coming down, if they've made one side of the field wider, they've pushed a man right out there to the side of the field, they've given themselves a wider field to play with, and they're going to exploit that. Now, if we just send a player over there, we're going to create gaps in the defence. So what we need to do is concentrate our defensive stance around where the play is happening. So if the play is down the left-hand side, we want to concentrate our defence over to the left-hand side. Remember, if the attack is coming down the left, the right is no immediate threat at the moment. So anything happening on the right-hand side of the field, we need to be aware of. We need to be aware of runs, we need to be aware of players in behind, but the attack is happening down the left, so we want to focus our players towards the left-hand side of the field. Be compact, restrict space. So we're shifting as a unit, and that comes back to the communication and the organisation there that we discussed. We need to shift as a unit over to the left. If they turn out from there and they switch the play to the right, we switch as a unit and we be compact on the right-hand side this time. So if there's width, we need to concentrate our defensive responsibilities over to that side. Now, what we need to be aware of is, from a defensive standpoint, is the mobility of those players. We discussed the structure, the structure from a defensive side. We've discussed that, so now we're going to discuss the structure from the attacking side. Now, this can be a little bit more fluid. The attacker could hold the ball up. He could be looking for players, midfield players arriving late to run off him, make a run and create some space. So the mobility, if you have let's say the attack is coming down the right-hand side and you have a player breaking from midfield and making a direct run right into the box, looking for a through ball through that defensive line, we need to be balanced. Now, that isn't necessarily the role of the first defender or even the second defender. This is the third, maybe fourth defender's roles, and also midfield players tracking runs. So if a player breaks from midfield, maybe one of the midfielders that we have needs to go with that run. But for balance purposes there, the third and fourth defender are just, if they've compacted their focuses down the right-hand side, are they aware of any runs coming in down the left? If there is a run coming in down the left, do they need to reposition themselves to cut out any danger? They might not have to track that run and go directly with that man because that's going to create spaces and ultimately the ball's on the other side of the field right now. So we just need to be aware. If players are moving off the ball, we need to be aware of that and we need to balance our field accordingly. Final point we've got here, and this is from an attacker's point of view, improvisation and creativity. Very, very useful tools as an attacker. That's what you're going to need to do. You're not going to be afforded an awful lot of time in and around the area as a striker, as an attacking player. You're not going to be given a lot of time and space to do what you want to do. So that's where creativity, your turns, back heels, tricks, fakes, moves, anything. That is where that comes into play. Anything like a dummy, even a step over, as a defender, you need to remain focused at all times. Be disciplined, be patient, follow runs, follow players, watch their bodies. Keep an eye on the ball. If they are going to do a fake, make sure that we're keeping an eye on the ball at all times. We're light on our toes, and we can adjust our bodies accordingly to cut out any danger. So if they're being particularly creative in what they're doing, make sure that we're remaining focused, we're remaining disciplined, and we're being patient. We're not diving into challenges. The moment we dive into challenges is the moment that we're turned back and we end up facing our own goal. And if we're facing our own goal as defenders, that means something's gone wrong, and we're needing to recover. Okay, so let's take a look at our first session. What we're going to look at here is defending from a crossed-in delivery. So the attack's coming down one side. We're going to concentrate our defence, and we're going to defend the cross. So you can start with the side channel here. I've sectioned off about 5 yards there down the side of the field. You can adjust that for whatever distance you want the players to cross from. I would recommend pushing them further out depending on how many players you've got in your defensive line. If you wanted to play with a full back four, give them the full width of the field there so they can set up as they would do on the field. Now, I've got a one-on-one situation here. We've got one defender against one attacker in the side channel. Now, that's up to you. That's optional. You can just have the player run unopposed down the sideline and cross the ball in. That gives you, more crosses coming into the box, which means more opportunities to defend. In this situation here, it's a 50-50 whether or not the defender wins the ball back, and the cross might not come in at all. What we've got on the field right now are two players in the middle. They're the defenders, the red players there. We've got a blue who is going to be attacking the cross. So we've got 2-on-1, so it's weighted in favour of the defenders. What we're going to have is we'll see now the players run back. They're pressing back with the runner. So the runner down the side is moving. They're keeping their chest open to the play so they can see the runner. They can see where the cross is going to be delivered from. And they can also keep an eye on that defender, on the attacker, I'm sorry. So the blue attacker there, I want them to make life as difficult for the attackers as possible. Run between players, run off shoulders of defenders. Make it really difficult and make them, keep them aware of where you are at all times. Now, if those defenders didn't drop back steadily with the runner down the side, they would find that they would get behind the play, in which case they're now running back. They're trying to gain ground. So remain constant, remain with your chest facing the play. If you need to drop a little deeper, that way you can come out and attack the cross. Just make sure you're aware of where the cross is coming in from and where the attacking players are coming from as well. Make sure you're picking them up, make sure you're communicating amongst your defenders, and make sure everybody's doing the same thing. And the next session we're going to look at is a simple pressing and organisation exercise. It's just about keeping our shape as a defensive unit. So we've got the coach who starts with a ball, or another player, for example. We've got 3 attackers that are in blue, and we've got 3 defenders in red. You can include a goal if you want, just to make sure that that we can set up on the field and we've got reference points for where we need to be. At any point, the coach can pass into an attacking player. So passes into a blue player. Blue player takes a touch to control the ball and keeps the ball. At that point, the defenders have to shift their position quickly so that we've got the role of the first defender who's going to go and press the ball, the immediate danger. We've got the second defender who provides a little bit of depth and cover. And we've got the third defender who provides some balance to the field. So what we want is we want them to pass the ball in, and we want everybody to shift. There's no opposition here, okay? So we're not trying to win the ball back. We're just trying to get into a shape. So we want to see communication, we want to see speed, and we want to see structure. We want to see accuracy of those 3. Once they're in position and they're happy with that, coach can give them a thumbs up if that is the right position. At that point, that's a great time to jump in and coach any points there. If we think, okay, let's assume the role of the third defender. As the third defender, can I cut out a pass? Am I blocking off a passing channel for a through ball? Could I be exploited in any way if a certain pass came in? Do I need to adjust my position? That's a good time to get in and coach those points. What we'll do then is the player with the ball, the attacker will pass back to coach or player who starts the play. Everybody will drop back to their original position, and the coach will pick a new pass. And again, from there, it's who presses the ball, which player's job it is to assume which role, who's going to take authority in that situation as well, and create roles for people. So if they want somebody else to press the ball, can they make that clear? Can they be vocal about that? Can they send somebody else quickly and efficiently to the ball? So when the ball's passed in, we'll press out, we'll get into our positions, we'll stop there. Coach will give us an okay, we'll drop off quickly. player will pass back to coach, and he'll make another pass. We'll keep doing this until we've mastered it and we can get into positions, and then we can run it as a real situation. We can include the goal, we can start having the attackers pass in between themselves and create an opportunity on goal. So we'll do it in no pressure to start off with, so we get the roles right, and then we'll move it into a full game situation. And the final session here we're going to look at is a little bit of 1-against-1 defending. So we're going to bore down into all the technical fine-tuning of one-on-one defending. So first off, the ball is going to be passed into an attacker. The attacker's aim, there's no target to aim for, so we're trying to really discourage any sort of passing or shooting here to try and bypass the defender. We're looking for it to be very pure and for them to take the defender on and try and dribble the soccer ball over the line of 4 red cones. So as soon as the ball's passed in, the defender in blue there can run out and close down the player. What they're going to have to do at this stage is kind of bend their run into play, because as their angle is a little bit off, it gives the attacker a chance to just take the widest route possible and completely bypass. So they're going to have to be quick. They're going to have to attack the middle of the field to start off with, so that they're restricting space and immediately start pressuring and delaying, as we touched on earlier. So delaying, now what I want the attackers to do, very, very important here, we're trying to cater this towards the defenders. So for the first couple of minutes, I'd like you to stress to the attackers that this is only 50%. They're only going 50% of their full potential, full speed at this point, just so that they can allow the defender a chance to jockey back with them, slow them down, get their body in the right position, and then we can move that up to 75%. Now we can start thinking about, okay, well, can I turn the defender? Can I turn them on their blind side? Are they too narrow? So are they, when we talked about the surfboard, skateboard before, if they're too central, it means they can be passed on the left and passed on the right. So can they show them to one side of the field? I'd like the attackers at this point at 75% just to give them a bit more to think about, because ultimately if we make mistakes and we get turned and we get beaten as a defender, that's our learning time there. We're giving it a chance. Okay, well, why did that go wrong? And providing I think about the reasons why that went wrong, it means I can correct that myself next time. So when we step that up to 100% now we should hopefully be starting to learn from a couple more of the mistakes that we've made. Experiment with our position on the field, okay? So if I lead with my right foot and I'm showing them to the left-hand side of the field, can I force them out of that side of the field? Equally, we could adjust the cone, the start position, and allow them to lead with the left foot and show them to the right-hand side of the field. It's important that we're able to defend both ways, because that situation could arise at any time during the game. You might find a player that's particularly strong on their right foot, so you want to attack their right foot so that they have to use their left foot more and hinder them that way. So there's different ways we can think about this. I want this to be an experimental one, though. It's one-on-one, and I really want to fine-tune those points that we touched on earlier. So really make this about the defenders. Tell the attackers to resist the urge just to try and beat that defender straight away. We really want to build on those points. So we want to build on the pressure. I'm out to the player and I'm touch tight. You could even break that down and stop them at that point and say, okay, well, who thinks they're close enough to that defender? If the defender's, to the attacker, if the attacker's very quick, do we need to step a little further back? Do we need to maybe have another half a yard space to allow us to be able to beat that attacker if they change their pace quickly and they try to take us on for pace? If I give myself a little bit more room away from them, am I giving myself more of a chance? So these are the things that I want to think about. These are the questions that I want to be posing to the defenders and giving them that chance to think for themselves and then work out where they need to pressure, where they need to delay. Can they make play predictable? Can they show them to different sides of the field? And can they experiment with that?
Coach Mark, thank you so much for the great information. Coaches out there, I hope you really enjoyed that educational video. This is Coach Eric, and I wanted to let you know that we have a 14-day free trial going on right now of Soccer Coaches University. It is our monthly program where you get one-on-one help from us with any questions you have. We also provide you with full session plans in video format and downloadable PDFs. each and every month. So you get 2 full weeks of session plans every single month sent to you via email. And then you also get a login username and password so you can log in and access the material at any time you're a member of Soccer Coaches University. So get your 14-day free trial of Soccer Coaches University, and you'll be able to log in right away and get access. So we look forward to seeing you inside of Soccer Coaches University. You can start your free trial by going to the link on the screen, coachestrainingroom.com/SCU29. Again, that's coachestrainingroom.com/SCU29. Coach Mark and myself, Coach Eric, look forward to seeing you inside of Soccer Coaches University so you can expand your own coaching education and get your players and teams to the next level. We'll see you there, coaches. Take care and have a great day.